life of every people, there is someone who comes to represent their struggle, whose by their very life sets an example for the ambitions of a whole people in the long, proud history of the Persian people, through all of their struggles, that brings us to this moment. That ambition, that sacrifice, is represented by the President of the National Council of Resistance, Maryam Rajavi. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to present to you Maryam Rajavi.
Le monde demande une protection pour les résidents d'Ashraf, mais le régime des Mollahs et ses alliés en Irak posent tous les obstacles. J'appelle le monde à se dresser contre un massacre que les Mollahs et le gouvernement irakien annoncent tous les jours. J'appelle les États-Unis, l'Union européenne, la Ligue arabe et les Nations unies. Le temps de l'inaction est terminé. Demandez fermement l'annulation de l'ultimatum criminel du gouvernement irakien. Opposez-vous à sa décision de déplacement forcé des résidents d'Ashraf et au Conseil de sécurité décider l'installation d'observateurs de l'ONU et de casques bleus à Ashraf jusqu'au transfert complet des résidents. Ne permettez pas la répétition du massacre du 8 avril.
Today, there is no doubt, as I said earlier, we're at a critical juncture for the residents of Camp Ashraf. The State Department's delay, its silence, and its inaction on every front is incredible. Unless immediate action is taken, another tragedy, much larger than that one in April, is looming. The U.S. must remove the MEK from the foreign terrorist organization list. The U.S. and the EU must push the UN Secretary General to notify al-Maliki that he cannot close the camp until the UNHCR has completed its work on behalf of the Ashraf residents. President Obama must show the political courage to use the United States' economic tool to demand that the Maliki government honor the United States' commitment to protect the citizens at Ashraf, even in the face of Iranian pressure to the contrary. And unless Maliki agrees to honor his commitments, then his scheduled 12 December visit to the White House should be canceled. And everyone must remember that we have a very, very narrow window within which to accomplish these actions, or there will be blood on our hands. And the world will see that America and the EU did not intercede when we had the opportunity to do so. And we will all bear responsibility for the horrible outcome because we lack both the moral and political courage to stand for what is right. We must make sure, for the sake of mankind, that it does not happen. Thank you very much.
3,400 people gave up their arms and agreed to accept disarmament in return for a solemn promise by the United States of America that they would be protected. They signed a contract. Each and every one of them signed a contract with the U.S. representatives of the U.S. government saying we would protect them. So it's much different than Benghazi. We gave our word. And our word has to be good for something. I don't care what the niceties are. I don't care what the surrounding circumstances are. When we get people to give up their weapons and they're relying on our protection, we have a moral, as well in my judgment, as a legal obligation to be there and to do whatever it takes to protect those lives, whatever it takes. You watched that video of the April assault, and I'm sure it horrified you and disgusted you. But for we Americans, and General Shelton turned to me as the video was playing, he said to me, "That's a great scene, isn't it? Defenseless people being shot with American weapons and run over with American vehicles." I felt disgusted and ashamed when I saw that video. How did the United States let that happen? Well, I have a message for our government, and I have a message for the Secretary General and all of the members of the Security Council. You can't assume people aren't going to know about this anymore. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. And the ball is in our court, as we say in America. It's time for the American government to step up and lead. It's time for the American government to step up and assume its responsibilities. It's time for the American government to stop making excuses and stand for the things that have always been near and dear to the hearts of Americans. Our country was built on our desire to be free, on our desire to be protected, to do whatever we want, to practice whatever religion we wanted. Those are the core values of America. And if we stand for anything, we have to make sure that not one more resident of Ashraf is injured or killed. Not one more. Not one loss is acceptable. Well, our message to our government is, the whole world's watching. It's time for us to do the right thing. Thank you.
The West intervened in Iraq. The West contributed to the situation that now exists there. The West cannot wash its hands of that. Anyone who supported that intervention when it took place must live with the consequences that are now unfolding before our eyes. This is not something that we can stand back from. Now, I commend the European Union for at last taking the action of appointing a special envoy to deal with this matter, something that has occurred only in recent months, even though the situation has been plainly needing such an intervention for a much longer time. I commend also the UN High Commission for Refugees for awarding asylum seeker status to the residents, which gives them specific international law protections. But are we going to have a situation where, as a result of inaction, the UNHCR is going to be discredited because its protection may be proven to be worthless? It's not just the residents of Ashraf and their future that is at stake, but the future of respect for international law and protection of vulnerable people, wherever they may be in the world.
However, the Iraqi government has systematically hindering possibilities of peaceful solution. It has to cooperate with with High Commissioner on Refugees and to setting the stage for another daily attack. While Iraqi government is doing this, question is why the High Commissioner for Refugees has not taken necessary measures to start interviews with Ashraf residents yet. The High Commissioner must not allow Iraqi government to arbitrarily stop the legal process and enforce the violent attack on defenseless, unarmed residents of the camp. We urge United Nations and the UN Security Council to compel with Iraqi government to revoke the deadline for closing the camp, and as it was said before, to undertake protection of the camp residents by blue helmets until the High Commissioner on Refugees accomplish its tasks.